It can't be. I just don't believe it. Stephen slammed his hand down on the counter as if to punctuate his disbelief. The small crowd gathered outside the general store, waiting for the weekly delivery truck, buzzed like a disturbed beehive. I saw it with my own two eyes, Martha insisted. Even asked Max where he was off to looking so dapper. But what about Zoe? She was crippled because of him, saving his drunk hide. Saved him, and for what? So he could run off? Should have let the bastard drown. Now, Martha, that's no way to talk. Another woman chimed in. But it ain't right. We have to do something to help her. Help her how? Stephen scoffed. You know Zoe. She never needs anything. I'm fine, she'll say. Stubborn as a mule, that one. But she's a good woman. If I ever see Max in the city, I'll knock his teeth in. And you be right too, Stephen. Where's the justice in it? The woman is disabled because she pulled his drunken self from under the ice, and he just leaves her for some young thing in the city. The crowd murmured in agreement for a long time, and for good reason. 3 years ago, Zoe, the town's former postmistress, had seen her husband Max take a shortcut across the frozen river. She was angry with him. He hadn't come home the night before, and she suspected he'd been with Brenda on the other side of town, but she ran to save him anyway. By the time anyone else saw what was happening, she had managed to push Max onto the solid ice, but she didn't have the strength to pull herself out. By the time the men from town reached her, a large chunk of ice had shifted, pinning her and crushing her spine. Zoe wasn't completely bedridden. She could move around the house, but only for short periods. Then she would have to lie down again, otherwise, the pain would become so blinding it brought darkness to the edge of her vision. For a while Max stayed by her side, a picture of devotion. But then he realized Zoe couldn't stop him anymore. He started staying out late again. And today the news had ripped through the small town. He had left. Gone for good to be with someone young and healthy. Zoe stared out the window. It was something she did often. She would prop herself up with a mountain of pillows and just watch. Watch the world go by. A neighbor walking their dog, a flock of birds taking flight, the school bus making its afternoon run. Sometimes she would wait for her husband like this. He would sometimes forget that she couldn't always get up to make her own food. There were days, especially when the weather changed, when she had no strength at all, even just lying down. Today, even if she had wanted to, Zoe couldn't have gotten up. Everything ached, her head was splitting, and her eyes were swollen from crying. Max was gone. He had left her alone in this condition. And he had the audacity to say he'd looked after her for so long that he had no strength left. No man would have done what I did, Zoe, he'd said, his voice dripping with self-pity. You have to understand. I can't do this anymore. I'm a young man. I need a normal woman, you understand? Normal. I don't care what you think of me, but I refuse to live like this any longer. It's like being in prison chained up. Max, what about me? How am I supposed to live? What am I supposed to do? Zoe, you can apply to a nursing home. It's not just for old people. They have young people there too, people who are, like you. She had watched in silence as he packed his bags. He emptied his wallet, then took out a few bills and threw them on the table. I don't know if you'll need this. It's not like you can go to the store anyway. Zoe had shut her eyes. The most important thing was not to cry. Not to let him see. She would cry later. Right now she had to hold on. The tears came now, hot and endless. Zoe couldn't believe that at 33, she had become a disabled woman no one wanted, with only one road left. A nursing home. There was a knock on the door. Hello? Anyone home? The light's on. Zoe turned her head in surprise. Of course the light was on. Max hadn't turned it off when he left this morning, and she hadn't gotten up since. A man stood in the doorway. He looked like a drifter, not from around here, and rather rough around the edges. What do you want? He looked at her in surprise, then held up his hands. I was just looking for a place to spend the night. Maybe a couple of days just to get my bearings. Don't look at me like that. I may not be an angel, but I'm not a monster either. All right, I'll be on my way. Sorry to bother you. The man turned to leave, but Zoe, to her own surprise, said, Wait, there's a spare room. If it suits you. He looked at her astonished. But, I assume you're alone. Would that be comfortable for you? I don't care anymore, she said, turning her face away. She listened as the stranger moved about in the spare room. Then she called out, If you're hungry, you can make something. He peeked out. He was wearing a t-shirt now. It was faded and old but clean. Don't think. The man placed a few crumpled bills on her blanket. It's not much, but I don't want to be a freeloader. What am I going to do with that? I can't even get to the store. Zoe turned away again, hearing him clatter around in the kitchen. She cursed herself. What was she thinking, letting some homeless man into her house? About half an hour later, the man approached her bed. Can you sit up? We could have dinner. She looked at him surprised. What? Dinner? He helped her sit up against the pillows, looked around, saw a large wooden cutting board, and placed it on her lap. Then he set a plate of steaming stew on top of it. Is this comfortable for you? Zoe nodded, a lump forming in her throat. Even Max, her husband, had never taken care of her like this, let alone asked if she was comfortable. Where are you from? She asked. He smiled, and Zoe suddenly realized he wasn't old at all. Maybe 40 at most. You won't be scared? She shook her head. I'm just out of prison, he said simply. 5 years. My wife and I were coming home from a friend's house. Some guys started trouble. I misjudged my own strength. It was like something out of a bad novel. I got back and she was already remarried. I didn't want to cause any more trouble. Decided to start fresh. Figured there's always work for strong hands in the country. So I got on a bus and just rode. Got off at your stop, I guess. Zoe listened to his story intently. Another person dealt a bad hand by life. You should go see Mr. Peterson, she said. He's the foreman at the lumber mill. He's a good, fair man. I'm sure he can find something for you. Just don't lie to him. Tell him everything just like you told me. She thought she saw a spark of light in his eyes. Thank you. My name's Caleb, by the way. I'm Zoe. Zoe, he repeated. Then it's your turn. Tell me what happened to you, and why you're here all alone. Outside the general store, the crowd was buzzing again. We have to do something, Valerie exclaimed. Zoe's gone completely mad from grief. This is just not right. And what do you suggest we do, Val? Another woman said. Go over there and wag our finger at her? She's a grown woman, it's her house. We go over there, and she'll just tell us where to go. But what if he's scared her? They say he's a murderer. Oh, stop it, Val, you're just trying to scare people. Mr. Peterson's no fool. He wouldn't have hired just anyone. He must have believed him. The women couldn't agree on what to do, but they all came to one conclusion. Zoe had definitely lost her mind. 2 weeks passed. In the evenings, Zoe would watch out the window. She knew Caleb would be home soon. He'd come in, smile, start making dinner, always with a joke or a story. And she caught herself laughing at his jokes. Tentatively at first, but she was laughing. And she felt better. Though maybe it was just her imagination. Zoe, I'm home. She jumped. She hadn't even seen him through the window. Caleb laughed. Did you miss me? I got my first paycheck today. Can you believe it? First one in a long time. I stopped at the store. Didn't know what kind you liked. He placed a bag of chocolates next to her. Goodness, Caleb, why so many? For you to have with your tea while I'm at work. The store was packed today. You know, I felt like I was in an X-ray room. Zoe laughed. Oh, that's our town. The first few days, they were practically camping outside my windows. They talked, and Zoe, without even noticing, had sat up and was now talking while sitting on the edge of the bed. Caleb suddenly fell silent. Zoe, he said, his voice soft. You're really beautiful when you smile. She blushed. Beautiful? I'm a cripple. He sat down next to her and took her hand. What do the doctors say? Well, they said I should have continued the physical therapy, but I was in a hurry to get home. I had the farm, a husband. Now I have neither the farm nor the husband. But you could go back to the hospital now, find out what your options are. It's too late. It's been too long. 3 days later, Caleb was helping her into Mr. Peterson's pickup truck. Caleb, what are you doing? Zoe's face was red with embarrassment. The whole town seemed to have gathered outside her house. I'm not doing anything. We're going to listen to what the doctor has to say, and then we'll figure it out. Suddenly, Zoe heard Valerie's voice, the same Valerie who had been badmouthing Caleb all over town because Max was her cousin. Zoe, you listen to him. Your Caleb is talking sense. You should have gone long ago. Go on now, we'll be rooting for you. Zoe raised her eyebrows, speechless. Val? What's with the change of heart? You think I don't know what you've been saying? I said it, so what? I was wrong. Now go, Zoe. The doctor scolded her for a long time, saying she was selfish for letting herself get to this state, that she could have been walking long ago, but instead her husband had to carry her around. She tried to explain that Caleb wasn't her husband, but he interrupted her. Doctor, just tell us, is there hope? We'll do whatever it takes. There's always hope. In your case, it's not a great chance because everything has stiffened up in your spine. You should have started working on it right away. But if you promise me you'll make sure she does everything right, that she works on it constantly, then there's a chance. Sit down, let me draw you a diagram. At times, she hated Caleb and his torture rack, as she called the contraption he had built according to the doctor's drawing. She had no strength, everything hurt, but Caleb would command, 6 more times. I can't do any more. You can. You must. A month later, Zoe noticed she could sit up in bed without holding on to anything. Then she stopped having to use her hands to move her legs. Caleb, did you see? He just smiled. Of course I see. So we'll be walking down the aisle on our own 2 feet. Zoe froze, her mouth open. Walking where? To the courthouse or wherever you get married around here. Caleb, have you forgotten? I'm a disabled woman. And whether I'll ever walk again is a huge question mark. And do you remember that I'm an ex-con? Maybe you wouldn't want to marry someone like me. Zoe was silent for a long time. Then she looked up. I would. If you asked me, I would. Caleb came closer and knelt beside her. Zoe, do you know how hard this is for me? You're so beautiful, so desirable. Right here next to me, and I'm terrified to even bring it up. The buzz outside the general store was so loud you couldn't hear the passing cars. Valerie, are you lying? Why would I lie? Zoe herself asked me to send the seamstress over. Said she needed a wedding dress. Maybe it's not for her. Though she doesn't really have any family. I'm happy for her, Stephen said. And I've talked to this Caleb fellow. He's a decent man. He was in prison. So what? So what? He's a murderer. The argument didn't die down until the store owner came out. I'm closing in 20 minutes. After that, you'll have to go to the next town for bread. Max got off the bus. He should have come in the evening, when everyone was already at home. Now they'd be staring at him like he was some kind of freak. He hadn't been back to the town in 3 years. It had taken him 3 years to realize that even with Zoe, who could barely move around the house, he had been happier, better off than with that city girl, Linda. How could he have been so wrong? She had seemed so nice at first. But then, God forbid he spent a single penny of his salary, she would screech like a banshee. If he was a few minutes late, it was another interrogation. It wasn't a life, it was a prison. But it was all right. Now he was back and Zoe would be happy. He was approaching the house. Something wasn't right. A new roof, a new expensive fence. Do they pay disabled people so much now that they can afford such renovations? He should have found out about this sooner. He should have come back long ago. Max stopped. The gate opened and a man came out pushing a stroller. Does Zoe have guests? Or maybe she died or sold the house. It was her parents' house after all. But a second later, Zoe herself walked out of the gate. On her own 2 feet. Not limping, not stooping, not holding on to anything. In a beautiful dress with her hair done. She took the man's arm and they walked off. Max took a few involuntary steps after them. What? What is this? What's going on? Zoe stopped, turned around and raised an eyebrow. Well, look who it is. What brings you to our humble streets? Is the big city not big enough for you anymore? Zoe, who is that? Who is he, I'm asking you? And whose baby is that? Max's voice cracked into a falsetto. The man stepped forward, shielding Zoe and the stroller. You must be Max. Well, I'm Caleb, Zoe's husband. Don't come around here anymore. In fact, it's better if you just stay away, for your own good. They had almost disappeared down the street, and Max was still standing there with his mouth open. Then he saw his neighbor, an old woman. You better go, Maxie. Zoe's new man, he was in prison. He's a murderer. Max felt his knees begin to tremble. Maybe it wasn't so bad having to give his salary to his wife. Everyone does that, right? And the man turned and walked quickly towards the bus stop. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed the story, please support me with a thumbs up. See you soon.